Technofeudalism, how capitalism died and what rules us now. A world built on clicks. Every click you make, every scroll, every photo, post, or search is labor. But this labor is invisible, unpaid, extracted. Capitalism was killed by its own capital, cloud capital, writes Yanis Varoufakis. We thought we were free participants in a global marketplace. But what if the market no longer exists and we are living under a new kind of empire? Welcome to Technofeudalism, the mind behind the idea. Yanis Varoufakis isn't just an economist, he's a dissident philosopher in a world of accountants. A former Greek finance minister, he stood against the European Union's austerity demands in 2015, calling them economic waterboarding. He has spent his life asking, who really controls the world's wealth? But in his latest work, Technofeudalism, What Killed Capitalism, he argues that the old answers, capital, labor, markets, no longer describe our world. We still live under the illusion of capitalism, but its beating heart, the market, has stopped, he says. From markets to platforms. Once, capitalism thrived on competition. Producers made goods, consumers bought them, and prices mediated the dance between the two. Factories, machines, workers, bosses, the visible architecture of profit. But in the 21st century, production shifted from the material to the digital. Platforms replaced markets. Amazon doesn't just sell products, it owns the marketplace. Google doesn't just index information, it filters reality. Apple doesn't just make devices, it locks us into an ecosystem. Where markets once allocated resources, Varoufakis writes, platforms now allocate access. And with that subtle shift, capitalism gave way to something older and darker. Feudal power reborn in digital form. The return of the lords. In medieval feudalism, power belonged to those who owned land, the scarce resource of the age. Peasants worked it, but could never own it. Today, land has been replaced by the cloud. And the new lords are not kings, they are CEOs. Amazon owns the retail cloud. Meta owns the social cloud. Google owns the information cloud. Microsoft and Apple own the productivity cloud. In feudal times, peasants toiled on land they didn't own. Today, we labor on digital land we cannot see, says Varoufakis. We produce the content, the data, the clicks, and they collect the rent. When you upload a photo, send a message, or make a purchase online, who truly owns that action? You or the platform that monetizes it? The end of capitalist profit. Classic capitalism was about profit from production. A factory made shoes, cars, or clothes. It sold them for more than they cost to make. But platforms profit differently. Not by selling, but by owning access. They earn rent from the infrastructure they control. Their product is us. The market has been replaced by digital fiefdoms, Varoufakis writes. And the new lords extract rent not from labor, but from participation. Every business, every user, every gig worker must pay to exist within the digital ecosystem through fees, ads, or data surrender. If you can't function socially or economically without using these platforms, is that freedom or dependency? The serfs of the screen. We like to think we are free, that our scrolling is voluntary, our attention self-directed. But the algorithms do more than predict our choices, they shape our choices. The new serfs, says Varoufakis, are convinced they are free because their chains are invisible. In this new order, we don't just lose our data, we lose our agency. Our preferences, desires, even emotions are fed into a system that learns how to control us better each day. When an algorithm knows what you'll desire before you do, who's in charge of your will? When a feed curates your reality, what becomes of truth? The invisible empire. Feudalism was local. Lords ruled lands. Kings ruled kingdoms. But technofeudalism is global. Its castles are data centers. Its knights are algorithms. Its armies are networks. And its subjects? Us, billions of connected individuals generating endless streams of unpaid value. Every empire believes it will last forever, but this one hides itself behind the illusion of freedom. Varoufakis writes, governments depend on platforms to communicate, police, and even wage war. Politics unfolds not in parliament, but on privately owned servers. When public discourse happens on private platforms, is democracy still public? When elections depend on data analytics, who truly governs? Citizens or algorithms? The new currency is behavior. In capitalism, value came from labor. In technofeudalism, value comes from behavior. Your attention is monetized, your clicks turned into predictive commodities. Your feelings are assets, bought and sold to advertisers, insurers, political strategists. We have become unpaid workers in a vast behavioral mine, Varoufakis says. Each of us generating data for the lords of cloud capital. If every aspect of life, movement, communication, emotion can be tracked and monetized, is there any space left for privacy or even the self? The collapse of democracy. The old relationship between citizens and state depended on transparency and accountability. But today, the infrastructure of democracy is privately owned. Google controls information. Meta controls social interaction. Amazon controls commerce. When the demos lives on privately owned platforms, Varoufakis warns, democracy itself becomes a tenant. The rulers are unelected, unaccountable, and untouchable. Even governments are their clients. How do you resist power that doesn't declare itself? Power embedded in code, convenience, and habit. Imagining liberation. Varoufakis isn't nostalgic for old capitalism. He sees it as a stepping stone. What he calls for is digital democracy, a system where data, platforms, and cloud infrastructure are treated as commons, not private fiefdoms. If we must live in the cloud, he says, then the cloud must belong to us all. Imagine if users owned their data, if platforms were cooperatives, if the wealth generated by digital labor returned to the people who created it. Could such a future exist, or are we too deep inside the matrix to imagine alternatives? The question of our time. Capitalism didn't end with a revolution, Varoufakis writes. It ended with a quiet transition, from profit to rent, from markets to platforms, from citizens to users. We live in the age of technofeudalism, a time when power no longer needs to control our bodies because it controls our attention. So ask yourself, are you the master of your digital life or a tenant on someone else's cloud? The cloud can imprison us, Varoufakis warns, or it can liberate us, depending on who owns it. Power no longer is visible. That is why it is so complete. Yanis Varoufakis, Technofeudalism.